Whoa! Whoa! Woo! Man, I love rainy days. They're perfect for staying inside and making some amazing artwork. Hello there, I'm your art teacher, Mr. Guera, and today we are going to be working on another amazing art project. This one is paired with Buzu trading card number 2, Aqualinda. Aqualinda is a sweet-natured elemental sprite, which is like a fairy. So that makes one of her classifications mythic. She is able to change herself into any form of water she wants, whether it's a liquid, a solid, or a gas, which makes her other classification nature. Whatever the weather, this powerful Buzu character is certain to make quite the splash in any battle. And today, by using watercolors, I'm going to show you how to create this amazing rainy day masterpiece. Let's begin. Now, the first thing we need to lay down is some undercover. I call it that because it goes underneath your artwork and covers whatever your work surface is, whether it's a desk or a table. So in this case, I'm going to use newspaper. For this project, watercolor paper will work best, and that's because, of course, we're going to be using watercolors. I'm also going to be using 2 different sizes of paintbrushes. They're both flat on the top, one big, one small. And we're going to be needing a watercolor kit. And anytime that I use watercolors, I also like to have a bit of paper towel on hand. This can be used to blot up watercolors or to dry off your paintbrushes. And of course, we're going to need a container of water. I'm going to use this small jar filled about halfway up. And the last thing we're going to need is a spray bottle filled with water. We're going to use this toward the end of the project to flatten out our painting. You can find Amazon links for all of these art supplies in the description below. So let's begin with the watercolor kit, the container of water, your 2 brushes, your piece of paper towel, and you're also going to need to have your watercolor paper facing portrait. That means longest sides on the right and the left. As you may already know, watercolor kits come with a brush. We're not going to be using this brush. I'm going to be using a different one because these are a little bit wider. They've got a flat edge and they're going to cover more space. So hold it like a pencil, dip it in your waters, and let's pick blue. We start by adding 3 drops of water. Once we have all 3, what we're going to do is make a little puddle. We're going to use our brush to make that puddle gently. That's the name of the game when it comes to watercolors, is gently. Now I want you to take that blue watercolor and give me some nice long brush strokes that go up and down along the left side of your paper. Occasionally dipping your paintbrush back into your watercolors, adding a little bit more water once your blue watercolor gets a little dry, and just give it a nice solid coat on the left side. All right, wonderful. The next thing I want you to do is practice cleaning your brush. You're going to drag it back and forth along the bottom, really kind of dragging those bristles to get all the color out of there. Once you've done that, let's add 3 more drops to our next color, which is purple. 1, 2, and 3 drops. Now it's time to make that puddle gently, and let's go up and down, back and forth in kind of a pattern of blue, purple, blue, purple. I'm going to go up and down, making sure that the watercolors stay nice and wet. If you're using a kind of paper other than watercolor paper, you might want to only do a few layers. Just go up and down because regular paper tends to get oversaturated and super wrinkly. Now that you're done with your purple, drag it back and forth in the bottom of your water container again. And now what we're going to do is we are going to blend the blue and the purple together. You don't want any watercolor for this part, just get your brush wet with water. And you'll see that if you use just water, the water will combine the purple and the blue together. So where they meet, go over that part with a bit more water. Make sure that all of that white paper is covered by color. Now let's go back to our blue, and we're going to do this center section. Same thing. Nice long brush strokes back and forth, up and down. Don't mind the video if it's going too fast. In fact, if the video is moving ahead of you, you can always pause the video so that you can catch up and take the proper amount of time that you as an artist need for yourself. All right, I'm done with my blue. Clean your brush. Let's go back to the purple, up and down, and we are making this pattern, blue, purple,
purple. Go up and down. And you'll notice that if you use more water, the purple color will be more see-through, or it'll appear as a lighter shade. If you use less water, it'll come out a deeper purple. Now, if you use almost no water, your paper might be sticky once it dries. So be sure that you're using an equal amount of water to an equal amount of watercolor. And the only way that you can be sure that you're doing that is by practicing. So we've now gone back to our blue watercolor, and with our long vertical brush strokes, we are going to finish the paper as far as its coverage, taking this blue all the way over to the right side of our paper. Now, once the paper is completely covered, I encourage you to experiment a little bit. Put a little blue into your purple area, put a little purple into your blue area, and definitely just try using water to see the blending effects. This art project is a wonderful way to have a greater understanding of how watercolors work, how you can blend colors together and get different effects. So right now is an excellent time for that. We want to have these vertical colors going up and down to help represent the idea of rainfall. It is raining outside, those raindrops are falling down, and by doing these big long brush strokes and mixing back and forth between purple and blue, we can kind of get a sense of artistic motion. It looks like something is either falling down or going up, but in this case, since we're doing rain, it's definitely raindrops falling down. So if you do these huge long brush strokes, it looks like action lines. It also looks like a day full of downpour, with that purple just adding a little bit of extra artistic visual interest to make it look a lot cooler. Okay, I'm going to clean off my brush on the bottom of my water container once again, and then I'm going to just dry it off with my paper towel. I'm going to fold it around the bristles and gently pinch all of the excess water out of those bristles, set the paper towel down and the brush, and we're ready for our next step. Now that you're done, let the watercolor sit overnight until all of your paints are completely dry.
Okay, so when any form of water is released from clouds, it's called precipitation. When it rains, precipitation. When it snows, precipitation. And when it hails, yep, you guessed it, that's precipitation too. Aqualinda's first special ability is Blizzard Blast. This is when she turns solid ice instantly into an iced vapor that freezes Buzu.
Once they're dry, we're ready to get back to work. Starting with the larger of your two paintbrushes, I'm just going to add water, no paint at all, just water, and I'm going to paint in the shape of a water drop, which is like an upside down V with a rounded bottom. That's right. So I'm painting this unique shape of a water drop or a teardrop, and I'm just using water. And once I've traced around that shape, I'm going to fill it in with nothing but water. And what this does is very gently, very beautifully remove some of the watercolors that we put down, leaving only the shape and outline of the watercolor. Now, if you can't see it that clearly at first, that's okay. And the reason why it's okay, the more this painting dries, the more the water drops will reveal themselves. So you have to be a little patient. What you want to do is paint raindrops all over your paper. This creates an all-over composition of varying sizes. Do some paint drops that are big. I always start with the big ones, and I'm going to plot them all around the paper. Some really big, just some kind of big, maybe the size and length of 3 fingers. Kind of that shape, that size. So after you're done there, you can grab your smaller paintbrush and fill in all of the extra areas that you can find with smaller raindrops. With each raindrop, what you're trying to do is use the water and the brush to soak up some of that watercolor, and it's going to give you these ghost, almost phantom-like raindrops. So this is the power of watercolor. You can let it dry, you can add water later on, and really cause some really interesting and unique effects that you might not be able to get with other art supplies. As you can see now, I have indeed switched to my smaller brush, and there's a lot of different areas on my canvas that I can add smaller raindrops. And as I'm doing this, I am challenging myself to see how small can I make the raindrops? How far away does that make the raindrops look? Or how big can I make my raindrops, and how close up do those raindrops look? It's also fun to experiment with how wet or dry your paintbrush is when you're making your raindrops. If you make them extra wet, what kind of effect will that make? If you do it extra dry, what kind of effect will that make? It's up to you to kind of put the time in and keep going until you have completely filled up your watercolor paper with watercolor raindrops. Now after that, you're going to want to let the work of art dry again. Let it dry overnight if you can, because once it's dry, you're going to find that the paper has warped a little bit. It's going to curl up. It's not going to be flat anymore, and that's okay. That's the way that watercolor works. We can make the paper flat again by using the water bottle filled with water that we talked about before. And what I want you to do is give the back side of your artwork a nice little spritz, not too much, but put it on mist mode and spray it down. Now what I like to do is make sure that the water is even all over the paper. And I like to put a piece of wax paper, a regular piece of paper will work, even a pillowcase, any kind of cloth, and then something heavy like books. I'm going to put my heavy portfolio down on top of it and let it dry again overnight.
Precipitation is an essential part of the water cycle. As water falls to Earth from clouds, it eventually collects into bodies of water like rivers, lakes, and oceans. Then, as the sun comes out, it heats up the collected water, turning it into water vapor in a process called evaporation. The water vapor then collects when it meets the cooler temperature of the atmosphere and turns into clouds, which is the process called condensation. From there, we're back to precipitation again, and so the water cycle continues on and on and on. Pretty cool, huh? Aqualinda's second special ability is Hail Hurl. This is when she forms one huge ball of hail and throws it.
Now once it's dried overnight, you can pick it up again. Pick up the portfolio or the books or whatever that's heavy that you placed on it. Remove the cloth and then flip the paper over and it will be flat again, which is fantastic. Now, in and of itself, the way the artwork is right now is amazing. It's magic. You can stop if you want, but I found that most kids really like adding the kawaii look, which is 2 dots for eyes and a little simple mouth. If you want to do this, a felt tip pen works best. You can also use a marker or a Sharpie and add 2 small circles that are wide apart on each individual drop. In between them and a little bit underneath the eyes, you can add a very simple mouth. And you can add all different kinds of mouths, including half circles, ovals, frowny faces, smiley faces, and that even works for the eyes as well. Instead of 2 circles, maybe you can try 2 frowny faces for eyes, or 2 smiley faces for eyes, or maybe just 2 straight horizontal dashed lines for eyes. And you can mix and match, giving each one of your drops a different kind of emotion and personality. And there you have it. I think this turned out incredible. Definitely worth framing and hanging up on your wall. Simple but complicated to look at, colorful yet dreary, and happy. I think this has it all. Great job.
This is the Hoover Dam. It is a massive construction that is made of 4 million yards of concrete cement that generates a little something called hydroelectricity. Hydroelectricity is a form of energy that harnesses the power of water in motion to generate electricity. On its own, the Hoover Dam generates 4 billion kilowatt hours of hydroelectric power each year for Nevada, Arizona, and California, enough to serve 1.3 million people. What an efficient and planet-friendly way to create power. Aqualinda's third special ability is Icebreaker. This is when she spreads out ice crystals that give other Buzu the chill. Awesome! It makes total sense to use watercolors to create a scene with raindrops, and boy, the result is awesome, especially if you put those cute little kawaii eyes on. I want to thank you for your time today. I hope that you enjoyed making this project as much as I did. And oh my goodness, for all things Buzu, please go ahead and join us at patreon.com/BuzuCards to help build your Buzu collection and find the art lessons that they hold. That's all I've got for now, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Want to know more about the water cycle? Well, what are you waiting for? Check out Mr. Guera Reads Little Raindrop. Want something twice as nice and full of ice? Then don't forget to download and print your character sheet for Aqualinda. Link in the description below.